Snow fell heavily across the city that night. Cold wind moved through empty streets like knives. Most people hurried home quickly. Warm houses, hot food, families waiting inside. Nobody wanted to stay outside longer than necessary, especially not in weather like this. Luxury cars passed silently through the glowing streets. Restaurants remained warm and crowded. People laughed inside cafes holding hot drinks. And just a few streets away, two little boys were trying not to freeze to death. Near the back wall of an old, closed magazine, a thin 12-year-old boy sat curled against the snow-covered bricks. His coat was torn, shoes soaked completely, hands red from cold. But despite shaking uncontrollably, he held one thing tightly: his little brother. The smaller boy couldn't have been older than 6. Tiny, weak, barely conscious from cold. The older brother wrapped both arms around him desperately, trying to protect him from the snowstorm with his own body. "Don't sleep," the older boy whispered repeatedly. "Please don't sleep." His voice trembled badly, not only from cold, from fear, because deep down, he knew what happens to people who fall asleep in weather like this. The little boy opened his eyes weakly. "I'm hungry," he whispered. The older brother closed his eyes painfully for a second, because hunger feels even crueler in winter. Earlier that day, he searched garbage bins behind restaurants for food. Nothing. He begged near the market. Ignored. One man shouted at him to leave. Another threatened police. And now, night had arrived with empty stomachs and freezing wind. The older brother's name was Timur. The little boy was Ali. Their mother died months earlier from illness. Their father disappeared years before that. Since then, the streets became home. Cold stairs, bus stations, abandoned corners, anywhere slightly warmer than outside. But tonight, even survival felt impossible. Across the street, a black luxury car stopped at a traffic light. Inside sat a wealthy businessman named Kamal, 45 years old, expensive suit, successful construction company owner, the kind of man constantly surrounded by meetings, money, and pressure. His driver waited quietly while Kamal scrolled tiredly through business messages. Then suddenly, something outside the window caught his attention: movement near the alley wall. Kamal looked up briefly and froze, because through the falling snow, he saw the two boys, one child desperately holding another against the freezing wind. The image hit him strangely hard. For several seconds, Kamal simply stared silently. The driver noticed too. "Poor kids," he muttered quietly. The traffic light turned green. Cars behind them started moving. Kamal looked away slowly, then said the sentence most people say when life shows suffering unexpectedly: "There are too many people like that." And the car drove away. Warmth returned immediately inside the vehicle. Soft music, heated seats, comfort. Yet strangely, Kamal could not stop thinking about the boys afterward, especially the older one, the desperate way he protected his little brother from the snow. Hours later, Kamal sat alone inside his enormous luxury house. Beautiful home, warm fireplace, expensive silence. But despite all the comfort surrounding him, his thoughts kept returning to the alley, to the children, to the freezing little boy barely staying awake. Finally, Kamal stood up suddenly. "Prepare the car," he told the driver sharply. The driver looked confused. "Sir?" Kamal grabbed his coat quickly. Now. Because somewhere deep inside, his conscience had finally awakened. And neither he nor those two little boys knew yet that this decision would change all 3 of their lives forever. The snowstorm became worse after midnight. Wind pushed through the empty streets violently now. Most shops had closed. Street lights flickered through the falling snow. And somewhere, inside the freezing darkness, 2 little boys were still trying to survive. Meanwhile, Kamal's black car moved quickly through the city again. This time, he wasn't thinking about business, or money, or meetings. Only the boys, especially the older child's eyes. Tired, protective, desperate. Kamal couldn't explain why the image disturbed him so deeply. Maybe because he had a son once, a little boy who died years earlier from illness. And since then, something inside Kamal quietly disappeared too. Work became his distraction, success became his escape. But grief never truly leaves people. It simply sleeps inside them quietly until life suddenly wakes it up again. "Where exactly did you see them, sir?" the driver asked carefully. Kamal pointed toward the narrow street ahead, near the old market alley. The car slowed. Snow covered almost everything now. Empty benches, trash bins, doorways. For several terrifying seconds, they saw nobody. Kamal's chest tightened painfully because deep down, he already feared the worst. Then, suddenly, the driver pointed toward the side alley. There! Kamal immediately opened the car door before it fully stopped. Cold wind hit him violently. Snow soaked his expensive shoes instantly, but he barely noticed, because near the brick wall, he finally saw them again. Tamir still sat there, holding Ali tightly, but now the younger boy looked frighteningly pale, his eyes barely open. Tamir looked up weakly, hearing footsteps approach. Instant fear filled his face immediately, because street children learn dangerous lessons early. Adults rarely approach with kindness. Tamir quickly tried standing protectively in front of his little brother. "We didn't steal anything," he said desperately. His voice cracked badly from cold. "We'll leave." Kamal froze hearing those words, because no child should speak with that kind of fear, especially not while freezing to death. Kamal slowly removed his coat and wrapped it around Ali immediately. The little boy trembled violently. "He's burning up," Kamal whispered in shock. Fever, dangerous fever, probably from days in the cold. Tamir still looked terrified, suspicious, ready to run despite exhaustion. Kamal crouched down slowly near him. "What's your name?" The boy hesitated, then quietly answered, "Tamir." "And him?" "My brother." "What's his name?" Tamir looked down protectively at the smaller boy. "Ali." Kamal nodded softly, then said carefully, "You both need warmth now." Tamir immediately shook his head nervously. "No police, no shelters." The panic in his voice shocked Kamal, because suddenly he realized these children had probably experienced terrible things already. "We're not taking you to police," Kamal said gently. "We just want to help." Tamir remained silent. Snow continued covering his hair and eyelashes slowly. The child looked exhausted beyond his age, too tired to keep fighting, too scared to trust. Finally, Ali whispered weakly against Kamal's coat, "I'm cold." That tiny, broken voice shattered the last wall inside Kamal completely. Without another word, he carefully lifted Ali into his arms. The little boy felt terrifyingly light, like hunger itself weighed almost nothing. Tamir instantly panicked. "Don't take him!" Kamal looked directly into the boy's frightened eyes, then quietly said, "Come with us." Silence. Heavy silence, because trust can feel terrifying to children abandoned by life. Finally, after several painful seconds, Tamir slowly nodded. The car doors closed behind them moments later. Warm air surrounded the boys instantly. Ali almost cried, feeling heat again. Tamir sat stiffly near the door, still prepared to escape if necessary, still unable to believe kindness could be real. Meanwhile, Kamal watched the two boys silently, and deep inside, he already understood something life-changing. He could not leave these children behind again. Not after seeing them like this, not after hearing fear in their voices. Because sometimes one moment changes the direction of a person's entire life forever. And this was that moment. The drive through the city felt unreal for the boys. Timur sat stiffly near the car door, ready to run at any second. Even inside warmth, fear still controlled his body. Meanwhile, little Ali leaned weakly against Kamal's coat, half asleep from exhaustion, his tiny hands still shaking from cold. The heater inside the luxury car worked softly. Warm air, soft seats, safety. Things the boys hadn't experienced in a very long time. But strangely, comfort frightened them more than the streets, because suffering had become familiar. Kindness had not. Outside the windows, bright city lights passed one after another. Huge buildings, restaurants, warm homes glowing through snowy darkness. Ali slowly looked outside with tired eyes. "So many lights," he whispered weakly. Kamal quietly watched him through the mirror, then softly asked, "When did you last sleep inside a house?" Timur lowered his eyes immediately. "I don't remember." The answer filled the car with painful silence, because no child should forget what home feels like. After another 20 minutes, the car finally slowed near enormous black gates. The gates opened automatically. Timur's entire body immediately tensed again, because behind the gates stood the largest house he had ever seen in his life. Massive mansion, golden lights, beautiful garden covered in snow, huge windows glowing warmly against the cold night. Ali stared silently in shock. "Is this a hotel?" he whispered. Kamal almost smiled sadly. "No, this is home." But the boys didn't move after the car stopped, especially Timur. His survival instincts screamed danger now. Rich people frightened him, because rich people usually ignored children like them, or worse, used them, humiliated them. The driver opened the door carefully. Still, Timur stayed frozen, protecting Ali beside him. Kamal noticed immediately. So, instead of ordering, he quietly stepped out first, then crouched slightly outside the open car door. "You can come inside for only tonight if you want. No one will force you." Timur studied his face carefully, searching for lies, because street children learn to read adults quickly, very quickly. But strangely, Kamal's eyes didn't look dangerous, only sad, deeply sad. Finally, Ali whispered weakly beside him, "I'm cold," and that decided everything. Timur slowly stepped out, holding his little brother's hand tightly. The boys entered the mansion carefully, like frightened animals entering a trap. Warmth surrounded them instantly. Soft carpets, golden lights, the smell of food, beautiful silence. Ali looked around in complete amazement. Meanwhile, Timur became even more nervous, because nothing in his life prepared him for places like this. A houseworker approached quietly, carrying warm towels. Timur immediately stepped backward protectively. Kamal quickly noticed. "It's okay," he said softly. "No one will hurt you here." Those words almost sounded impossible. The boys were taken toward a large bathroom filled with steam and warm water. Ali stared at the bathtub like it was magic. "Can we really use this?" he whispered. Kamal felt something painfully tighten inside his chest hearing that question, because children should never feel guilty for basic warmth. Fresh clothes were brought quickly. Soft sweaters, warm socks, clean pajamas. Ali smiled for the first time after putting them on. Tiny smile, but powerful enough to break Kamal emotionally, because suddenly he remembered his own son wearing similar clothes years ago, and grief quietly returned again. Later that night, the boys sat nervously at the enormous dining table. Hot soup, fresh bread, meat, fruit, more food than they had seen in weeks. Ali began eating quickly again, but Timur suddenly stopped him gently. "Slowly," he whispered protectively, "you'll get sick." Kamal watched silently and realized something heartbreaking. This child had become both brother and parent far too early. After dinner, a doctor arrived privately to examine Ali. The fever worried everyone, but thankfully, they arrived just in time. Another night outside might have killed him. That truth shook Kamal deeply, very deeply. Late that night, house workers prepared a beautiful bedroom for the boys. Soft beds, warm blankets, dim golden lights. Safe. Yet, when Kamal checked on them later, he froze emotionally near the doorway, because despite the giant bed, both boys slept together, tightly curled on the floor beside it, still holding each other, as if safety only existed inside each other's arms. And suddenly, Kamal understood something life-changing. These boys did not need luxury first. They needed trust, love, and time. The next morning, the mansion felt different. Not quieter, warmer. Because for the first time in many years, children's footsteps echoed through the halls again. Small footsteps, careful footsteps, still nervous, but alive. Kamal stood silently near the kitchen doorway, watching the boys eat breakfast. Ali sat wrapped inside an oversized sweater, still weak from fever, but finally smiling a little. Meanwhile, Timur remained alert, always watching everything carefully, even while eating, as if danger could appear at any second. That hurt Kamal deeply, because children should not carry survival inside their eyes like that. "Did you sleep well?" Kamal asked softly. Ali nodded immediately, but Timur hesitated before answering quietly, "Yes, thank you." Polite, too polite, like someone afraid kindness could disappear if he made mistakes. After breakfast, Kamal gave them a tour of the house slowly. The boys looked overwhelmed by everything. Huge windows, warm fireplaces, shelves full of books, a television larger than any screen they had ever seen. Ali touched the soft carpet carefully with his feet, then whispered to Timur, "It feels like clouds." Kamal nearly smiled hearing that, because sometimes children surviving difficult lives still protect beautiful innocence somehow. Later that afternoon, Kamal noticed something strange. The boys never separated, not even for a second. If Ali entered another room, Timur followed immediately. If a servant approached too quickly, Timur stepped protectively closer. Even during lunch, he secretly saved bread pieces inside his pocket, just in case food disappeared later. Kamal saw it happen, quietly, and instead of stopping him, he turned away emotionally, because hunger creates habits that survive long after stomachs become full. That evening, snow continued falling outside, while Ali sat near the fireplace drawing on paper for the first time in years. Simple drawings, little houses, trees, a smiling stick figure family holding hands. Kamal looked at the picture carefully, then noticed something painful. Every family drawing included 4 people, not 3, 4. Because even after everything, Ali still imagined a father figure beside them. Meanwhile, Timur remained distant emotionally, respectful, quiet, but careful, always careful, as if attachment itself could become dangerous. Kamal understood why. Children abandoned enough times stop trusting prominence. One night, during dinner, Ali accidentally dropped a glass onto the floor. It shattered loudly. The little boy froze instantly. Complete terror filled his face. And before anyone could react, Timur immediately stood in front of him, protectively. "It was my fault," he said quickly. "I'll clean it." His hands shook badly, because somewhere in their past, mistakes clearly led to punishment. Kamal slowly walked toward them. The boys looked terrified now, waiting, bracing for anger. Instead, Kamal crouched down calmly beside the broken glass, then softly said, "It's only a glass." Silence. Ali blinked rapidly, confused, because children expecting violence become shocked by gentleness. Kamal carefully handed Ali another cup of juice afterward, and for the first time, the little boy smiled at him without fear. Tiny smile. Trust beginning. That moment changed something inside Kamal permanently. Later, that night, Kamal sat alone in his office staring at an old frame photograph. His son, the little boy he lost years ago. Pain returned quietly again. But strangely, this time, grief felt different, softer somehow. Because after years of emotional emptiness, two frightened boys unexpectedly brought life back into his home. And somewhere deep inside, Kamal was beginning to understand something terrifying. He no longer wanted them to leave. Days slowly turned into weeks. And for the first time in a very long while, Timur and Ali stopped worrying about surviving each morning. No more freezing nights, no more searching garbage bins for food, no more hiding from dangerous people after dark. Now there were warm beds, hot meals, clean clothes, safety. Yet, strangely, Timur still couldn't relax completely, because children who lose everything learn one painful lesson early. Nothing good stays forever. Every evening, before sleeping, he secretly folded their clothes neatly beside the bed, ready to leave quickly if necessary. Kamal noticed immediately. Of course he did. The boy lived like someone waiting to be thrown away again, and that realization hurt him more every day. Meanwhile, little Ali transformed rapidly inside warmth and care. His fever disappeared completely. Color returned to his face. Laughter returned too. Sometimes the mansion echoed with his small, happy voice now. Houseworkers smiled hearing it, because the giant, lonely house finally sounded alive again. One afternoon, Kamal returned home early from work, unexpectedly, and froze hearing something from the living room. Laughter. Real laughter. Ali sat on the carpet, while Timur unsuccessfully tried teaching him chess. The younger boy kept moving pieces randomly while laughing proudly. "You're cheating," Timur complained. Ali grinned mischievously. "You still lose." Kamal quietly watched them from the doorway, smiling faintly, because suddenly the mansion no longer felt empty. But the beautiful moment shattered quickly when Ali suddenly asked innocently, "Timur, do you think we'll stay here forever?" Silence. Timur's smile disappeared instantly, and Kamal saw fear return to the boy's eyes immediately. Dangerous fear. The fear of hope. Because hoping for permanence feels terrifying after abandonment. Timur carefully lowered his voice. "Don't get too comfortable." Ali looked confused, but Kamala ka is nice. Timur forced a small smile. "I know." Pause. "But people change." Those three words hit Kamal harder than almost anything else, because suddenly he realized how deeply life had wounded this child already. Children are not born distrusting kindness. The world teaches them. That evening, during dinner, the atmosphere felt quieter than usual. Ali sensed tension too. Even while eating dessert, he kept glancing nervously between Timur and Kamal. Finally, Kamal softly asked, "Do you boys want to go somewhere else?" Ali immediately shook his head violently. "No." But Timur stayed silent, careful again, and Kamal already knew why. The boy feared attachment, because losing people hurts more once they become family. Kamal slowly placed his fork down, then said something he had been carrying inside his heart for days. "You don't have to leave." Complete silence. Ali stopped breathing for a second. Timur looked up slowly, confused, suspicious, scared. Kamal continued quietly. "This house is big enough, and honestly, it stopped feeling like a home until you arrived." Ali's eyes instantly filled with tears, but Timur still looked frozen emotionally, because children surviving the streets do not trust promises easily. "What if one day you change your mind?" Timur whispered carefully. That question shattered Kamal internally, because no 12-year-old should ask questions like that. questions filled with survival instead of innocence. Kamal slowly stood up, then walked toward the boys carefully. No sudden movements, no pressure. He crouched slightly beside Timur's chair, then quietly said, "I know I can't erase what life did to you." Silence. "But I want you to hear something clearly." Kamal's voice softened emotionally now. "No child should have to earn a home." Timur's eyes immediately filled with tears he tried desperately hiding, because nobody had ever spoken to him like that before. Not as a burden, not as a problem, as a child deserving love simply for existing. Ali suddenly jumped from his chair and hugged Kamal tightly, small arms wrapping around him emotionally. And for one brief second, Kamal nearly broke completely inside. Because after losing his own son years ago, life unexpectedly placed two broken boys into his empty home and slowly healed all three hearts together. Meanwhile, Timur quietly wiped tears away when nobody looked, because deep down, despite all his fear, he wanted to stay too, more than anything. Winter slowly disappeared from the city. Snow melted, trees began turning green again, and little by little, life inside the mansion transformed too. Ali became louder, happier, more playful every week. The frightened 6-year-old boy who once shook from cold in an alley now ran laughing through giant hallways with toy airplanes in his hands. Sometimes houseworkers laughed, hearing him shout, "Look, I'm flying!" And every single time, Kamal smiled quietly hearing that voice, because joy had returned to the house again. Real joy. Meanwhile, Timur changed more slowly, carefully, like someone learning how to breathe after surviving underwater too long. He still woke up suddenly from nightmares sometimes, still hid food occasionally, still apologized too much. But now, he smiled more often too, especially when Ali laughed, because protecting his little brother had been his only purpose for so long that seeing Ali finally safe healed him deeply. One evening, Kamal returned home exhausted after business meetings. The mansion lights glowed warmly through the rainy evening, and for the first time in years, he felt something strange while entering the house. Peace. Not business success, not pride. Peace. The moment he entered, Ali ran toward him immediately. "You came back!" Tiny arms wrapped around Kamal's legs excitedly, and suddenly, something inside Kamal's chest softened painfully again. Because no one waited for him like this anymore after his son died. No one. Until now. During dinner that night, Ali talked endlessly about school, new friends, drawing competitions, books. Tiny, ordinary things children should always worry about. And Kamal listened carefully to every word, not pretending, genuinely. Meanwhile, Timur watched quietly from across the table, and for the first time, he noticed something terrifying. Kamal looked at Ali exactly the way fathers look at sons, with patience, pride, warmth. That realization frightened Timur deeply, because attachment had become real now, dangerously real. Later that night, heavy rain began outside again. Thunder shook the windows softly. Ali became frightened immediately. Night storms reminded him too much of the streets. Without thinking, he hurried toward Kamal's office, where the man still worked late. "Can I stay here?" Ali whispered nervously. Kamal immediately opened his arms gently. "Of course." Ali climbed beside him on the large sofa, quietly holding a blanket. Small, safe, comforted. And for several peaceful minutes, they simply listened to rain together. Then, suddenly, half asleep, Ali whispered something softly, one tiny accidental word. Dad. Silence filled the room instantly. Ali froze immediately after realizing what he said. Fear entered his eyes again, because children abandoned before often fear loving new parents too much. "I'm sorry," he whispered quickly. "I didn't mean—" But before he could finish, Kamal gently pulled the little boy closer. And suddenly, after years of grief, years of loneliness, years of pretending work mattered more than pain, Kamal felt tears burn behind his eyes. Because that single word healed something broken inside him, something he thought died forever with his son. "It's okay," Kamal whispered shakily, more emotional than he intended. Ali slowly relaxed against him afterward, safe again. Meanwhile, Timur stood silently near the office doorway, unnoticed. He heard everything, every word. And suddenly, emotion crashed into him violently too, because deep down, he wanted to say the same word, wanted to belong somewhere, wanted a father too, but fear still held him back. Fear that love disappears, fear that happiness leaves. Kamal finally noticed him standing there quietly. Their eyes met silently across the room, and somehow both understood each other immediately. No words needed, just wounded hearts slowly learning how to trust family again. Then, something unexpected happened. Timur slowly walked into the office, very slowly, as if every step fought against years of fear. Kamal stayed completely still, giving him space, choice. And after one long, painful second, Timur finally whispered softly, "Can I stay too?" Kamal opened his arms immediately, and for the first time in many years, the lonely mansion no longer held strangers inside it. It held a family. For the first time in years, Timur and Ali felt safe. Really safe. School became normal now. Homework, friends, warm dinners, laughter inside the mansion. And slowly, the fear inside the boys began fading. Not completely, but enough for happiness to finally grow. Kamal changed too. Business meetings mattered less now. He returned home earlier, spent evenings helping Ali with reading, teaching Timur chess properly, listening to their stories, living again instead of simply existing. And somewhere deep inside, all three of them quietly began believing life had finally become peaceful. But sometimes, the past does not disappear so easily. One rainy afternoon, Timur and Ali returned home from school laughing together. Ali carried a small school project proudly. "Kamal Aka will love this," he grinned excitedly. Then suddenly, Timur froze. Completely froze. Because near the mansion gate stood a man smoking beside the street. Dirty coat, sharp eyes, dangerous smile. The moment Timur recognized him, all color disappeared from his face instantly. Fear returned violently, the kind of fear buried deep inside old trauma. Ali noticed immediately. "Timur?" But Timur grabbed his little brother's hand tightly, too tightly. "Get inside," he whispered urgently. The man slowly smiled, seeing them, then casually dropped the cigarette onto the wet street. "Well," he said mockingly, "look who became rich." Ali immediately hid behind Timur again, because even children can sense danger instinctively. The man's name was Rashid. Years ago, after the boys lost their mother, Rashid controlled many homeless children around the streets, forced them to steal, beg, collect money, and if children failed, he punished them brutally. Timur protected Ali from him countless times, sometimes taking beatings himself. And now, the monster from their old life stood smiling near their new home. "How did you find us?" Timur asked quietly. Rashid laughed softly. Rich neighborhoods notice poor boys suddenly appearing. His eyes moved toward the mansion gates greedily. "Looks like someone saved you nicely." Timur's heart pounded violently now, because he already understood why Rashid came. Money. Always money. "I'm not going back," Timur said firmly. Rashid smirked. Who said anything about going back? Then his expression darkened slightly. "But maybe your new daddy should hear certain stories." Ali started trembling beside Timur immediately, because they both knew what Rashid meant. Fear, manipulation, threats. The same things he always used against vulnerable children. At that exact moment, a black car entered the driveway behind them. Kamal, returning home early. Rashid immediately stepped backward slightly, but not afraid, interested. Kamal stepped out of the car and instantly noticed the atmosphere. Timur, pale. Ali, terrified. Unknown man near the gate. And suddenly, every protective instinct inside him awakened immediately. "Who is this?" Kamal asked calmly. Too calmly. Rashid smiled politely now. "Oh, nothing serious. I just know these boys from the streets." Kamal quietly looked toward Timur. The child's eyes already revealed everything. Fear. Real fear. That was enough. Kamal slowly stepped closer beside the boys protectively, then placed one hand gently on Timur's shoulder. Simple movement, but powerful, because for the first time in his life, someone strong stood in front of Timur instead of behind him. "They're family," Kamal said quietly, "and family problems belong to me now." Rashid's smile weakened slightly, because suddenly the powerless, homeless children he once controlled were no longer alone anymore. And deep down, Timur realized something life-changing in that exact moment. This time, someone would protect them too. Rain continued falling softly outside the mansion gates. Cold drops sliding down black umbrellas. Dark clouds covering the evening sky. And standing between the boys and their past was Kamal, calm, silent, protective. For years, Timur believed survival meant protecting Ali alone. No help, no adults, no rescue coming. Just him against the world. But now, for the very first time, someone stood in front of them instead, and that feeling nearly overwhelmed him emotionally. Rashid forced another fake smile. "I only wanted to talk," he said casually. Kamal didn't move, didn't step aside, didn't lower his gaze. Something dangerous appeared quietly inside his eyes now, the kind of quiet anger powerful men carry. "Then talk," Kamal replied calmly, "but you'll do it away from my children." My children. The words hit Timur and Ali like lightning, because Kamal had never said it so directly before, not publicly, not out loud. And suddenly, both boys felt something painful rise inside their chests. Belonging. Real belonging. Rashid noticed their emotional reaction immediately. His smile disappeared slightly. "You became attached fast," he muttered mockingly. Kamal's voice became colder. "They're children. They should have been loved from the beginning." Silence. Heavy silence. Because men like Rashid never understand people like Kamal. One sees children as opportunities, the other sees them as human beings. Finally, Rashid stepped closer slightly, then lowered his voice. "You know nothing about these boys." Kamal answered instantly. "I know enough." Rashid smirked again. You know they stole? Timur immediately lowered his head in shame, old fear returning again, because survival still haunted him. But before guilt could consume him, Kamal spoke quietly beside him. They stole food. Pause. So society failed them long before they failed society. Rashid's expression hardened, because manipulation no longer worked here. Meanwhile, Ali quietly held Kamal's hand now, small trembling fingers wrapping tightly around it, and Kamal gently squeezed back without looking down, protective, steady, safe. For several long seconds, rain filled the silence between them. Then Kamal finally spoke again. "If you ever come near these boys again." His voice stayed calm, almost soft, which somehow made it more terrifying. "You will deal with me." Rashid stared at him carefully now, because suddenly he realized these children truly belonged to someone powerful, someone willing to fight for them, and predators avoid difficult prey. Finally, Rashid stepped backward slowly. "This city creates many homeless children. You can't save them all." Kaman looked directly into his eyes. "No." Pause. "But I can save these two." Silence again. Then Rashid turned and disappeared into the rainy darkness. Gone. Just like that. But the fear inside Timur remained shaking violently, because trauma does not disappear when danger leaves. Kamal immediately noticed. Without saying anything, he carefully placed one arm around Timur's shoulders. Simple gesture, but the boy nearly broke emotionally from it, because after years of carrying responsibility alone, he no longer had to anymore. Inside the mansion later that night, Ali finally fell asleep safely after hours of fear. But Timur remained awake, sitting silently near the window, rain tapping softly against the glass. Kamal entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of hot tea, then sat beside him without pressure. For several minutes, neither spoke. Finally, Timur whispered, "I tried to protect Ali." Kamal nodded softly. "I know." Tears slowly filled Timur's eyes now. "But sometimes I was scared too." That confession shattered Kamal internally, because children should never have to admit fear like exhausted adults. Kamal gently placed a hand on the boy's shoulder again, then quietly said the words Timur needed his entire life. "You're not alone anymore." And suddenly, after years of surviving like a soldier, Timur finally cried. Not quietly, not carefully, completely. Because strong children eventually break too, once they finally feel safe enough to stop pretending. Kamal pulled him into a tight embrace immediately, and in that moment, something invisible healed inside both of them. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to begin becoming a real family forever. Years passed quietly after that rainy night, and slowly, the fear inside the boys finally faded. Not completely. Some wounds never disappear fully, but now those wounds no longer controlled their lives, because love had entered places where fear once lived. Ali grew into a joyful, energetic boy, always laughing, always talking. The frightened child, once freezing in the snow, now filled the mansion with life every single day. Meanwhile, Timur became calmer too, stronger in a different way. Not the desperate strength of survival anymore, the peaceful strength of someone finally safe. He studied harder than anyone, read constantly, protected Ali less anxiously now, because deep down he finally trusted that another adult would protect them too. Kamal changed most of all. The cold, lonely businessman disappeared slowly. Before the boys, his mansion was beautiful but empty. His life was successful but emotionally dead. Now, everything felt alive again. School meetings, birthday celebrations, arguments over homework, laughter during dinner. tiny, ordinary moments that healed his broken heart quietly. One evening, years later, snow began falling across the city again. Soft snow, beautiful snow. Ali ran excitedly toward the window, smiling. "It's snowing!" Kamal froze slightly hearing those words, because suddenly he remembered another snowy night long ago, a dark alley, two freezing boys, a choice that changed everything. Timur quietly noticed Kamal's expression, then slowly walked beside him near the window. For a moment, both simply watched the snow silently. Finally, Timur spoke softly. "You came back for us that night." Kamal smiled faintly. "Yes." Timur lowered his eyes emotionally. "If you didn't—" He couldn't finish the sentence, because both already understood the terrifying truth. Another night outside might have killed Ali, and maybe destroyed Timur forever, too. Kamal gently placed one hand on the young man's shoulder, then quietly answered, "No." Pause. "You came back for me, too." Silence filled the room warmly, because deep down, all three of them had rescued each other. The boys saved Kamal from loneliness, Kamal saved the boys from the streets, and together they built something none of them expected to find again. Family. Real family. Not built through blood, built through love, protection, choice. A few months later, Kamal officially adopted both boys legally. The court process finished quietly. Simple signatures, documents, formalities. But emotionally, it meant everything. Because for the first time in their lives, Timur and Ali truly belonged somewhere permanently. No fear of being sent away, no fear of losing home again. When the judge finally smiled and said, "Congratulations," Ali hugged Kamal immediately, crying happily. Meanwhile, Timur quietly wiped tears away, trying to hide emotion. But Kamal noticed anyway. Of course he did, because fathers notice things like that. Later that night, the three of them sat together near the fireplace while snow covered the city outside. Warm lights filled the room softly. Peaceful silence. Home. Real home. Ali eventually fell asleep against Kamal's shoulder, holding a blanket. Timur smiled watching him, then softly whispered something he had carried inside his heart for years. "Thank you, Dad." The word landed gently this time, not accidental, not fearful, certain, real. And suddenly, Kamal felt tears fill his eyes again, because years ago, he thought losing his son destroyed his chance to be a father forever. But life, in its strange, painful, beautiful way, had led him toward two boys freezing in the snow. And together, they healed what grief almost destroyed. Outside, snow continued falling softly across the sleeping city. But inside the warm, glowing mansion, three once lonely souls finally understood something powerful. Sometimes family is not found at birth. Sometimes family is found on the coldest night of your life, when someone chooses not to walk away. If this story touched your heart, remember this. A single act of kindness can save a life forever. Never ignore suffering. Never assume someone else will help. Because sometimes the person freezing in the cold today is only waiting for one human being to care. And real family is not only about blood. Real family is about who stays, who protects, and who comes back for you when the world turns cold. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because some stories don't just make us emotional, they remind us what humanity truly means.